Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on applying for selective high schools. My name is Jane Miller, and I'm the CEO of the New South Wales P&C Federation. So good that so many of you can join us this evening. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on Aboriginal land. The P&C Federation acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present, and we extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. I'm coming to you from Gadigal land, and I know we have parents and carers from across the whole of New South Wales. You're all very welcome. If you don't know anything about the P&C Federation, we're a not-for-profit independent organisation. We're committed to free public education for all, and we advocate for parents and carers as partners in their child's education. We also provide support, advice, resources, training and advocacy for member P&C associations across New South Wales. So the purpose of tonight's webinar, we're delighted to be hosting this webinar with colleagues from the Department of Education. And considering that we had more than 900 registrations tonight, there's obviously a lot of interest in this topic. Tonight, our presenters will help us learn more about that selective high school process, how to apply, and how the placement process happens. Thank you to everybody who pre-submitted questions. We've got some really good ones there. We will have time for a Q&A after the main presentation, but you're also very welcome to post further questions in that Q&A box that's on the bottom of your screen, and we will be watching out for those as well, and we'll include as many as we have time for. Please be aware when you're submitting a question through that live Q&A, it won't be able to be viewed by anyone else but the organisers. So just some final housekeeping before we get going with the presentation. If you'd like to activate live transcript, go to the icon at the bottom of your screen and click on Enable Auto Transcription. I also want to make sure you all know we're recording tonight's webinar, and in the next few days we'll share a recording and also several resources from the Selective Education Unit. So everyone who's registered for tonight's webinar will get that. Finally, there are some staff, my colleagues from the P&C Federation behind the scenes tonight, and they will be helping out. So I want to introduce our presenters for tonight, all from the Department of Education. We have Magda Pollak. She is the leader of the Selective Education Unit. Hello, Magda. We have Skye Bauer, who's the Senior Disability Placement Officer, Eva Canute, Senior Education Officer, and Lily Barkley, Manager Opportunity Class Placement. Sorry. So I will now hand over to Magda. Thanks, Magda.
Thanks, Jane, and welcome everyone. I'm going to go rather quickly to allow you a lot more time at the end for questions. So let's start. We're in the middle of the process of applying for selective high school entry for Year 7 in 2025. So we're going to be covering these parts of the process. We have a very, very comprehensive website, so anything we don't answer today, you're welcome to have a look at it on the website. I'm sure the answers will be there. So without further ado, what are these selective high schools that we are recruiting students for? Selective high schools are students that are catering for the really high potential and gifted students. Every school in New South Wales has provisions for high potential and gifted students, but these are schools that are able to do some further things like grouping the students in larger groups, like exploring concepts in greater depth or greater length. Students can explore more complex concepts, and sometimes they even compact the curriculum and the children go through faster. There are fully selective high schools and partially selective high schools, and the only difference really is that fully selective high schools do all their subjects with their selective peers. And partially selective high schools only do their core subjects, English, math, science type subjects, with their selective peers, but do their electives with the rest of the year. We have a fabulous video guide on our website about what selective high schools are, and I would recommend you to go and have a look at that. I've used the term high potential and gifted. What exactly is that? Well, high potential students are those whose potential, their ability to absorb concepts and learn is greater than those of students of the same age. Gifted students are those whose potential significantly exceeds those students, and highly gifted students are, of course, those who are vastly bright. And some of those students really do need to be grouped in this way. We have our schools mapped completely on our website, so I'd recommend you go there. It's a map that allows you to show to see how far away your home is from those schools. We have 17 fully selective high schools, 25 partially selective high schools. We have 4 agricultural high schools, some of them have borders, and we have a particularly wonderful thing called Aurora College, which I will talk about in a minute. So how do you know that you've got a high potential and gifted student? Well, those children enjoy learning. They have an intense curiosity, they have a great memory, they have a great sense of humour. They learn so much more quickly that they need information sent to them more quickly, and some of them become really, really focused. When you've got a little toddler and the toddler starts really wanting to know everything about dinosaurs, that's one of the things you might. Jane, did you have a question?
Hello. Yes, I just quickly wanted to let you know that we seem to have resolved the issue with sharing the screen. So Magda, if you want to just try again sharing your screen, then we'll be able to see the presentation.
I'm sorry, wasn't I sharing? Oh, I do apologize.
That's okay. We had a little technical difficulty. Apologies, everyone. But if you start sharing now, we should be okay.
Oh, I do apologize. There you go.
That's fine. Thank you.
Well, thanks for letting me know. I've been showing you a wonderful set of screens that you couldn't see. Okay, so I've talked about this. On we go. Aurora College, which I did mention earlier, is a wonderful program where students actually stay in their own rural and remote schools. But what they do there is they do their core subjects, just like other partial selective high schools, but they do their core subjects virtually with teachers in small groups using the contemporary technologies like this meeting, like Zoom and that sort of thing, to access their subject matter. And they also they gather together in camps several times during the year. So it's a wonderful thing for rural and remote students. However, it's only one of the ways that we cater for for high potential and gifted students. Each government high school has provisions for high performing and gifted students. And as you can see, this is the Year 6 students total. This is public schools. This is non-government schools. This is the number of students, parents who apply for selective high school entry for their children, and this is the relative number of places, some 4,000 places available. So you can see it's not for everyone, and it's not meant to be for absolutely everyone either. The placement stages. Now the key dates are listed on our website and also in the document, which is an information document for parents on our website. We've got the main crucial dates listed there. You have to, if you want to print that page out, cut out the dates and put it on your fridge, you won't miss anything crucial. the applications will close on the 20th of November. You need to get it in by then. If your child has a disability and you need special reasonable adjustments for the test, you need to get that in by the 20th of November too. Then you have to watch this date too. If your children change schools, you need to tell us, because we assign children to test centres by school. So if you've moved, you may find that your child has been put into a test centre according to the last school they were at, which may not help you at all. So let us know. 2 weeks before the test, which is the 9th of May, we'll send you out your test centre allocation. You'll be able to get that from the dashboard. We'll also email you that information. 7 days after the test, you need to put in your illness misadventure request, which one of my team will tell you about. There are other fairly important dates too, which you'll need to know. Early September, you'll get your outcome. So we'll make. We go back. The placement outcome was late August. Sorry, late August. After that, you've got appeals, and we keep making offers. So appeals outcomes will be released in October, and finally you'll get an authority to attend a selective high school, and then your child starts at the selective high school if your child has been successful. So there are some things to note about submitting your online application. You need to go to our website, and from there you will find the link. Before you do anything, I would urge you to read this document, or at least skim it, because it's very, very important. It tells you all that information about those crucial dates and how you do certain things and when to do certain things. And if you haven't read it, you might miss out. One of the most important things that parents ask us about is, how do we choose our schools? You only get 3 choices. So how do you use those wisely? Well, again, we've got a wonderful video guide on our website, which gives you a lot of information. But basically what you need to do is really look at what your child needs. Have a look at how far you're asking your child to travel, and it would be very much better if you didn't ask them to travel too far. So choose a school within reasonable travelling distance, and look at what the school offers, so that you can have a look at the website and see whether they've got specialist programs that you might be interested in. You don't have to choose 3 schools. You can choose them. You can choose 1 or 2 or 3. If your child qualifies for 1 school out of your 3 choices, it will not matter where you put it. If your child is eligible, we will offer that place whether it was first, second, or third choice. But if your child qualifies for more than 1 place, we will give you only the highest choice for which your child qualifies. So don't put an aspirational one at the top, thinking that I don't really want to go there, but I want to know if my child would have made it into there, because that will be the only offer we give you, and you can't change choice at that point. So really make the first choice the one you really, really want your child to go to. Now, school choices can be changed. So don't worry if at the first, when you're making the application, you're not too sure. Choose 3 schools that you think at that point, but remember that you can change your choice without any problems until the 16th of June. So we often get asked whether if students are unsuccessful, whether they can be put on a reserve list, and the answer is they can't. So reserve lists are also ranked, and they can only go to the school that they have you've actually chosen. So you can't say, oh, my child might have qualified for such and such a school, but I didn't choose it. Can I put it in now? The answer is no. So we just go down the reserve list as parents decline offers, and they do decline offers. Things change. I mean, it's November now, and you'll be given offers in August of next year. So all sorts of things can change. So you know, you can decline an offer and remain on a reserve list for a higher choice for a while. At a certain date in December, that stops. You have to, whatever you accept is the final choice you get. So you come off reserve lists after that. But I would commend this video guide on our website. It really helps you. Okay, so this is our website, and when you go to the website, there's an Apply Now button, and that takes you to the application, which looks like this. This is what we call the parent dashboard. Now, if you haven't ever seen this before or done anything with it, then the first step is to register. But very important, if you did have a child go through OC or a previous year's selective and you registered and you made an application for that child, you can't re-register. It will have a record of your email. It won't let you register again. What you have to do then is try to log in. If you can't remember your password, just click Forgot Your Password. You'll get a new one. Use the email you used last time, put the password in, and away you go, putting in the new application. So after that, you go to the dashboard. There you get a little button that says Go to the Dashboard. And the dashboard allows you to do quite a number of things. On the dashboard, you can check your application, you can make changes, and most importantly, you can view and send messages to us. So you get messages from us and you can send them to us as well. This is what your dashboard looks like if you have more than one child. Normally, for most parents, it's just the one child, and it looks like this. Now, be very, very careful. You can get to the last page of the application, but if you don't press submit, it's going to sit there like that. So check your dashboard, make sure that it says submitted, and then you know for sure that your application is through. So that's what it looks like. Then with these three dots here, if you click on those, you get whatever is possible at this moment. At this moment, you can only complete an application or view your application, or if you change your mind, you can delete it. But later on, you've got things like lodge an illness misadventure request, or lodge an appeal, or view outcome. You'll have a whole lot of choices here depending where you are in the process. Also, you'll get messages, and you'll be able to start a new message by clicking on that. And once you finish your message and send it, we get it. We assign it to the person who's best to answer it, and you get an answer straight away. It's much faster than trying to email us. And I'll hand over to Skye.
Thank you very much, Magda. My name is Skye Bauer. I'm the Senior Disability Placement Officer, and I would like to speak to you this evening about reasonable adjustments. So what are reasonable adjustments? Reasonable adjustments are the arrangements that we make to allow students with disability to access the placement test on the same basis as students without disability. Now, if your child does have a disability or medical condition, we'd really like you to tell us about it at the time of application so that we can make arrangements to support your child in the test if they need it. Parents are sometimes concerned that information about disability might somehow disadvantage their child during the placement process, but this is definitely not the case. We just want to make arrangements to support your child if needed. So how can parents request reasonable adjustments? In the application form, you'll be asked the question, does your child have any disability, medical or behavioural condition that is likely to affect their performance in the test? Now, if you select yes to this question, then the application form will allow you to request adjustments. If you select no at this point, the form won't proceed to allow you to request adjustments. So it's very important that if your child needs adjustments, you do answer yes to this question. All right, so the adjustments on this slide are just a few examples of adjustments that can be arranged. You might be wondering what adjustments you can or should request. And the answer to this really is that you should request the adjustments that your child has on a regular basis in class and for formal assessments like NAPLAN at school. So if your child wears noise cancelling earphones in class, or if they sit in the front row to reduce distractions, if their teacher prints their work in large font due to low vision, or if they need an FM system to assist with hearing, then these are the adjustments that you should request. Adjustments are not approved or recommended on the basis of having a diagnosis of a particular disability. They're really arranged to meet individual needs. Regarding modified test materials, I'd love to emphasise at this point that it is a paper-based test. Standard test papers are printed in Arial font size 12, and our large print options include font size N18, N24 and 36 on either A4 or A3 paper, and these options are published on our website. We really need to know requirements for large print at the time of application because we can't arrange this at the last minute. Also, if your child uses an FM system to assist with hearing, that's very important to note so that we can organise for you to get it set up with an invigilator on the morning of the test. I'm just going to skip past supporting evidence to students with asthma and anaphylaxis. If your child has anaphylaxis, we'll ask you to bring along an anaphylaxis kit to the test centre, which will be your child's anaphylaxis action plan and EpiPen or AnaPen, and you'll need to give that to an invigilator at the test centre on the morning of the test. Now, if your child has asthma, you'll need to give a copy of your child's asthma action plan to an invigilator at the test centre, but your child will be able to keep their inhaler and spacer on their desk. Now, back to supporting evidence.
Sorry, I was...
That's okay, Magda. Adjustments are most likely to be approved when they have been in place on an ongoing basis for assessment and learning at school. When you request adjustments, you're asked to tick to confirm that these adjustments are currently provided at school. There's no need for parents to ask schools for proof of this. When you indicate disability in the application form, our process is to contact the child's school to find out exactly what is needed to support the student. You will also have an option to upload documentary evidence to support your request. So this might be a report from a medical or health professional, such as a paediatrician. This needs to be uploaded to your application by the 20th of November, but if you're in the process of investigating disability and you're still waiting on a report, please do indicate yes to disability on the application form, and there will be a free text field to just explain where you're up to in that process. You could then send in the documentation after applications close by attaching the documentation to a message through your application dashboard. But just be aware that adjustments that are requested after the applications close can't be guaranteed. We do our best, but sometimes we can't arrange things at the last minute. On a final note, if adjustments are arranged for your child, we will send you a reasonable adjustments letter through your application dashboard around 2 weeks before the test, at the time when you receive your test authority letter. And this brings us to information about the test itself. So I'll hand back over to Magda Pollak for that section. Thanks, Magda.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Skye. Okay, I'm aware of time, so I'll gallop through this. The test itself, the test is the only thing that we need these days. We don't use school assessment scores. I think that was one of the questions that was submitted earlier. No school assessment scores at all, and only the test. The test is a particular type of test. It's fairly hard. I've noticed people asked us earlier whether it's worthwhile just letting your child do the test, even if you don't think that they're particularly hyperpotential or gifted. I would say no, it's not going to be a pleasant experience for a child to go through all of that really difficult material, especially if you're not really interested in sending them to a selective high school. The test just doesn't measure what other tests measure, how the student has learnt material given to him or her at the school. It's more about what their ability is, what their pattern recognition is, how they can infer from passages. It's all about ability. Again, we've got a really good video guide that will tell you more about it. There are tests of reading, mathematical reasoning, thinking skills, and writing skills, and they're all a measure of ability. Logical thinking, mathematical patterns, and inferential comprehension. Writing skills is not just about grammar, punctuation, and spelling, but the student's ability to write interesting texts for a particular purpose or audience. Then we allocate your child to test centres in whole primary school groups. I mentioned we send test centre letters out 14 days before. You have to print that email out and take it to the test centre. And of course, parents are responsible for taking children to and from the test centre. We're often asked how best to allow students to prepare for the test. The best way is to make sure they understand what they need to bring, how the test is going to go, what the timetable will be, and you'll see that will be sent to you in a test information bulletin. You'll be able to use practice items, which are also on our website. We've got practice tests of past papers where you can get your child to practice time management. There are hints on those pages not to take too much time for each question, to guess if you don't know, etc., etc. Very important that they understand that there is a question paper and an answer sheet. So they have to answer separately on the answer sheet. They colour in bubbles A, B, C, D, E, and so on. So they don't put it on the question paper, or that will be lost. So that's important. And if they think they've made a wrong answer, they just rub it out and put it in. So we've got wonderful things on our website, like a student resource hub. We've got the practice tests, but of course, even if the child does 100% on past test papers, that's no guarantee they'll do that well in the real test. No marks are deducted for incorrect answers, so they should guess. Make sure they get sufficient sleep and that they're not too worried about it. Some of the children can get very, very anxious, and it tends to be because the parents are very anxious too. Just make them feel that it's wonderful to do their best, and they'll still be loved, and there'll be no problem if they don't do as well as they were hoping. So we have something that has been instituted for the last few years called the equity placement model. So what we do here is we give special consideration to students of low socio-educational advantage backgrounds, Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander students, students from rural and remote locations, and students with disability. Now, it's very important to understand that we do not accept requests from parents for students to be put onto these groups. These groups are determined by information the department has. So up to 20% of places in each selective high school and opportunity class are held for students from these groups to help increase their participation. So what it means is that students in these particular equity groups can get an offer where their score is about within 10% of the minimum of first round offers. So they're a little bit lower than the last of the first round offers, but they're very often right at the same level as other students on a reserve list. So it's not that their scores are particularly low. So they're differently weighted. We get 10% of vacancies are filled by 10% of the 20% of vacancies are filled by students from low socio-educational advantage backgrounds, 5% Aboriginal, 2.5 rural and remote, and 2.5 students with disability. And this is a little graphic that sort of shows it to you. If you've got a group of 50 students, as you've got there, 37 would come from the main pool, 11 would come from those equity groups, and 2 would come from exceptions. And those are people who either missed the test because they were sick or some other misadventure, or they come from interstate or overseas and they can't sit the test. So you can see it's much, much better to do the test because you've only got a very small chance of getting in via an exception. Now, the other thing to really, really point out to your child is about malpractice. Malpractice is where basically children don't do the right thing and they try to cheat. So copying answers is one way they cheat. They continue to answer after the supervisor calls time's up. Sometimes children can talk amongst themselves and say, I'll let you see my paper, my answers, and that's just not on. They're not allowed to bring unauthorised material, and that can be things like rulers, certainly calculators, things like that. Disruptive behaviour, if they upset everybody else around them, they will be disqualified. Hopefully no one would ever do this, but if somebody tries to bring another student in instead of the student that applied, that's also something that is called malpractice, and any other conduct that attempts to provide an unfair advantage. And the result of that is swift. Everything is disqualified. That's the end of it. There is absolutely no scores, there's no performance report, there's nothing. That's the end of your process. So really tell your children that they have to be very, very careful not to look at anyone else's work and to put their pencils down as soon as they're told to do that. But you can look that up on our website too. And I'll hand over to Eva now.
Thank you, Magda. Good evening, everyone. If we go straight to the next content slide, I'm one of the senior education officers. Submitting an illness and misadventure request is possible for the 7 days immediately after the placement test. And as the name suggests, it's available in situations that are outside of the norm on the day of the test. So it could be that something that occurred during the test affected the child's performance, and this would be verified by the test coordinator, Cambridge Assessment, or the child was prevented from sitting the test on the day, for example, sickness or some other extenuating circumstance. The illness misadventure request needs to be submitted through the application dashboard together with documentation that supports the claim. The request will then go before the selection committee, and the selection committee firstly decides whether to accept the situation of the illness and misadventure, and then whether if they do accept it, they would usually agree to use an alternative form of academic merit, and the standard alternative that we use is the imputed NAPLAN result. As Magda mentioned, it's really important to bear in mind that students who sit the test have a much greater chance of placement, because only 5% of places at any selective high school are available for students who have missed the test. And it's also important to know that a discretionary activity such as attending a sports carnival would not usually be accepted by the selection committee. Overseas travel may also not be accepted by the selection committee unless triggered by extenuating circumstances. And again, documentation is required to support any claims of the illness and misadventure request. And next slide, please, and over back to you, Magda.
Sorry, it takes a moment. Thank you, Eva. I'll really try to gallop. We're starting to come to the end of our time limit. When you get your placement outcome in late August, you'll be, as I mentioned, you'll be given an offer only to the highest listed school for which the child qualifies. You may get an offer. You may get an offer with a higher reserve list. You may be unsuccessful for one of your choices, but still get an offer for another and a reserve list for the higher one. Or you may get an offer to your first choice, whereupon everything else will become not applicable. If you qualified for all three choices, the other two are not applicable because you got your top one. We usually ask for the decision to be made by 2 weeks when we first start, but that time gets shorter and shorter as the year wears on. So you have to accept or decline by the due date, which is on your email, and offers will lapse or be withdrawn if a response is not submitted by that date. So you're going to get a reserve listing showing bands A to E for selective. So band A will tell you that last year, the student on the same reserve list position as your child got an offer in the month that we made offers, so almost straight away. If you get a band B, it means that we made an offer to the student on that position last year in the next month. C, the month after that, D, the month after that. The last one means that either we didn't make an offer to that position at all, or it was very late. It was in the new year once school had started. So you can keep an offer and be on a higher reserve list until 3 p.m. on the 18th of December 2024, and we stick to that very, very strictly. So if you decide to give up your offer to stay on a reserve list at 3:01 on the 18th of December, it'll be too late. So you need to do it before 3 p.m. After that date, your child will come off the reserve list unless you declined your previous offer. And then we continue to make offers to students who either had only one
Okay. So now if we've come to the point where parents have received the outcomes of the test. So we're really towards the end of the cycle. At this point, there is an opportunity, if parents feel there has been some sort of anomaly, there's an opportunity to, within the 7 days after the receipt of the outcomes, there's an opportunity to submit a results inquiry. So the results inquiry really is a remarking of the writing test, and only the writing test can be reviewed. It is really to check that the data is correctly matched to the writing test, and there is a review of the examiner marked writing test by a senior examiner to ensure that the marking criteria have been correctly applied. The multiple choice tests cannot be submitted for a results inquiry because there are already robust checks in place to make sure that there have been no errors in the marking. The results inquiry may result in a higher score or a lower score, or may not make a difference at all. It may make no difference to the outcome, or it may make a difference to the outcome. It takes a few weeks before the results of the results inquiry are released, and then that may also be appealed directly through Cambridge Assessment, the test developer. So the results inquiry is done through Cambridge Assessment and does incur a fee to have the extra marking undertaken. If we continue on to the next slide, also within that 7-day window after outcomes are received, there is an opportunity to submit an appeal against the outcome. The basis for the appeal needs to be something that was unable to be covered by the illness and misadventure immediately after the test. On our website, we have extensive information about what constitutes a valid appeal. So we strongly recommend that if you are considering an appeal at that point, you read through those pages very carefully to avoid the disappointment of submitting an appeal that is not considered on valid grounds. Those appeals are handled through us, not through Cambridge, and the appeals that are valid would go through to an appeals panel, which is made up of a Director of Educational Leadership and at least 2 principals. And then the outcomes of those appeals are sent to parents at the end of October. But again, the best advice would be to really check the website and check what the valid grounds for appeals are. And I think that brings us to our final page on this slide, which is our contact information. So obviously you can find all this contact information on our website, but the message we'd really like to communicate is that once you have started an application, the best way to communicate with us is through the application dashboard, because that's the way we receive your communication the quickest way. It's constantly monitored, but there are other options there if you for some reason cannot access the dashboard. And that's the end of the presentation, I believe. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Magda, and the whole team for that very, very informative presentation. It was really quite interesting. We were getting a lot of questions through while you were talking, and obviously we had the pre-submitted questions, and I was just ticking them off as we went through, because you were answering the vast majority of them. There was an awful lot of information in that, so we really, really appreciate it. I do have a couple of questions I'm going to put to you that have maybe either been partially answered by the presentation or where there's still a little bit of grey area, certainly in the minds of our parents and carers who are online with us tonight. So one of the things is around information from primary schools. I think you did I think you did make clear that the decisions are not made. There's not an element of a sort of score or a marking from the student's primary school. However, apparently in the application form it does say you contact the primary school. What is that for? Is that to get the NAPLAN score, or?
No, we contact as soon as the applications close. Principals have their own students, whose parents applied on a dashboard, and they look at things that the parents have stated, such as the fact that they are students of Aboriginal background, they may have a disability, the parents may want reasonable adjustments, they may not be permanent residents. Those things they all check. And if there's something that they wish to add to what the parent has said, they will make a comment, or they'll tick a box. And they can, for example, a parent may not really understand that the child needs certain reasonable adjustments which the school has given them. So that's the sort of thing that we get from the school.
Thank you. That's great. So you're getting that input from the school in terms of the needs of that particular student. A couple of people have asked whether it's possible to get the scores or the historical data, if you like, for each particular selective school, and you know, what mark it is you need to kind of get.
Right. Yeah. So we in very many years gone by, we did have cut-off scores for schools. We no longer do that, and the reason for that is that all schools, really, all selective high schools, cater for their students' needs. There is no hierarchy. I know that parents believe that there is some kind of hierarchy of schools, but there is no hierarchy. There is no point talking about cut-off scores. It's very much more important that parents look at how far they have to travel, how close they can get their children there, whether other children from the child's school are going there. They've got to look at all sorts of other things. It's quite invalid for them to think, oh, this is the hardest school to get into, I'll put my child there, especially if they've got to travel huge distances to get the child there, because it doesn't mean that the school is any better because children with higher scores get in there. They all cater for their children's needs.
Thank you, Magda. There's clearly a lot of thought process from parents and carers as well going into that decision making around how to order their choices. So we've had a question about and also about you know, the outcomes and accepting choices. So we've had a question: if we accept the first choice, then that student will not be on the reserve list anymore. I think you made that clear in the presentation. That's right? If we see that our first choice is not good for us, is it better that we don't accept it and wait for the school coming from the reserve list? No, I think you have covered that, haven't you?
It's done in order of your choice. If we give you your top choice, you can't decline it and say, oh, we'll go for the second one. In order for you to have done that, you would have had to put the second choice first and the first choice second, and that way you could have got an offer to your second choice and been on a reserve list for your first choice. It only goes upwards. Reserve lists only go upwards. They don't go down in your choices. So choice number 1, 2, and 3 matter if the child doesn't just make it into one school. Okay, so it really matters that you pick the schools in the order you really want them.
Thank you.
Can I just add that it's really important for parents to do a little bit of research as well, and put the school that they most want for their child at number 1. And when I say do a little bit of research, you can parents can look at the websites of the schools, of the respective schools, just to find out what programs they offer. Yes, they are academically selective high schools, but you might have a child that's also very interested in music or dance or performing arts. So it's really important just to have those, to do that research to see if the school offers a more holistic program that will suit your child.
It's not about rank.
Mm.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just scrolling fast through these questions to try and pick the ones that I can see maybe haven't been fully covered already. Can you? I think there's one about, can you change your choices following the exam?
No, definitely not. You've got till June to do well. Following the exam, yes, but you've got the date of the 16th of June, which is the end. What we have to do at that point is we have to prepare lists for the selection committee, and so we can't have any choices changed after that. So that's the date. That's the drop dead date after which you can't change choices.
Okay. We've had several questions about the format of the test. Do we already know if the 2024 placement test will be purely on computers or printed question papers and answer sheets? You did talk about test centres. A few people have, right. A few people have said that that plan changed to online at one point, and so people obviously have that.
We're hoping to go that way, but certainly not next year. This particular coming year is still paper based. The year after, fingers crossed, we might.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know. Someone has asked, can you do the test again?
No, it's only on the one day. I'm not sure what that question is. If you mean that they've done it the previous year and you want the child to sit it again this year, the answer is no, because you wouldn't want the child to repeat the year, and the selection committee wouldn't accept that anyway. But if you're asking whether, if you missed the test this on the test day, there is another option to do it, no, it's only on the one day.
There was a question at the beginning of the presentation that quite interested me, and I suspect you're not necessarily going to be able to answer this, but it was a question from a parent wanting to know, you know, they're not quite sure whether their child would be the right experience for them. So they're clearly trying to work out, should they encourage them to go through with this process, you know, just as an experience. Do you have anything you can say about that?
Well, I think I was trying to answer that one by saying it's a very hard test, and what you don't want to put your child through is an experience where they feel that they really can't answer very many questions, and what you don't want is children crying in the test. And I would say no. If you really don't think, if you think it might be an interesting experience for the child, it's harder than you probably think, and it may not be a good experience.
But if you do have an inkling that your child might be high potential or gifted, then it would be worth giving it a try.
Certainly, but not if you just want them to do the test just for the experience. It's hard. It's really hard.
A couple of people have asked, what are partially selective schools? Can you talk a little bit more about the difference between selective and partially selective?
Yes, I thought I'd covered that one too. The fully selective high school children do all of their subjects with fully selective classes. The partially selective schools do their core subjects, so English, math, science, that sort of core subject, together with the selective cohort. But for electives like music and PE and other electives, they may be combined with the rest of the year, so that they're not fully selective. They're not doing all subjects with their fully selective cohort. That's the only difference.
Okay. Thank you. There's a question here that is quite granular about results within subjects. Are they averaged across subjects? For example, if a child gets very high results in one subject and not in another.
No, the question, first of all, the number of correct answers is what is first taken for each of the lobes, each of the 4 components, and then there is a process of scaling, and then there is a process of weighting. And once the weighted scores have been derived, they are just added up to form a score, and that's the placement score, which is not something released to the parents at all, or to the schools. It's only the performance report which is released.
It's a really practical one here, but might be reassuring for some students. Will there be working out paper available for the students to utilize during the maths test?
Yes, the question paper is their working out. They can use the question paper and scribble all over it. What they mustn't do is scribble all over their answer sheet. That has to remain clean, but their question paper is all for them to write their notes on.
Thank you. And I'm going to just ask one more question, which is, about the future. If a student misses out on placement for year 7, can they try again to get in following years?
Yes, there is a year, what we call a years 8 to 12 placement process. So every year, usually around June, applications are available from the websites of all selective high schools. And what they have to do is they have to complete an application per selective high school. They can choose up to 3 again, but they have to do it on 3 separate application forms and email them to the 3 separate schools. And then the schools tell them it's not a centralized process such as the year 7 entry. Each school can have a different set of criteria for entry, and they will let the parents know what it is that they're looking for. Some of them test the students again on a different test. Others require portfolios of some kind. Some of them interview students. They all have different processes.
Thank you, Magda. So I'm going to draw things to a close there. I want to thank Magda, Skye, Eva, and Lily. Thank you so much for your time. I know that the parents and carers that we've had on the call tonight here have really, really appreciated this detailed information. I do want to reassure everyone on the call that, yes, this session has been recorded. We will be sharing the recording. You might not hear from us for a couple of days because we're going to take great care in putting together our follow-up email with that recording to make sure that we have links to all of the resources that you're going to need. So we're going to work with our Department of Education colleagues to make sure that all of that is put together for you. But watch out in your inbox, and that will be coming within a few days, certainly within a week. So yes, thank you. Thank you to those presenters. Thank you to everyone who's joined us tonight. We do have some other very interesting webinars coming up. So again, we'll provide information about that in the follow-up email. And you'll be directed to a survey at the end of this webinar. We'd be very grateful if you could provide us with your feedback. Thank you to our presenters. Thank you for everyone for being here, and have a great evening. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.